told you, he's elusive.
Deca White is here.
So we'll be like the MJ group here. We'll be interpreting
Yep.
either way in.
Are there any others? Yeah, I'll be on.
We're going to be standing here on the podium. If you want to see it. Pasen por acá.
Bienvenidos, pasen, adelante. Should we move up a little bit? We could. I don't think we can move the podium any.
All of these guys are awesome. They totally.
¿Quieren que la mitad estén de este lado y la mitad de aquel? ¿Está bien todos de aquel lado?
¿En qué les va a hacer el equipo? Okay, ¿puedo usar su teléfono?
¿Quieres el mío? No.
Y vamos a estar mirando hacia afuera.
¿Y puedo usar el teléfono para hacer?
¿Hay más pancartas para...? Agarren pancartas para... ¿Alguien más? Aquí caben.
Para interpretar hay mucha gente en inglés.
Ríete, Valeria. Ríete, ríete.
We can make some room.
Yep.
Back. I like to do the back.
There.
You seem to work well in the back. They're calling out. All right. I think we're feeling good. Okay.
Sí, le dije que si quiere estar del...
All right.
That's my namesake, Leo. Hola, Leo.
All right. All right. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate this turnout. This is really overwhelming to see the number of people both out in the audience and standing here together today. My name is Falco Schilling, and I'm the Advocacy Director for the ACLU of Vermont. And I'm so grateful to have so many powerful allies and champions standing here, standing out in the audience, and standing with us across the state as we stand up for our immigrant friends and neighbors, our constitutional rights, and for the preservation of the rule of law. We have all seen the images coming out of Minnesota and around the country of heavily armed and unidentified federal agents ignoring basic human rights and violently targeting people based on the color of their skin, their accents, or because they simply exercise their First Amendment rights. We are here today to say enough is enough. Vermont can and will act to protect our communities. This afternoon, you're going to hear from legislative leaders as well as advocates and community members about the impacts we're seeing here in our state and what we can do about it. Some of these policies include providing access to counsel to people detained by ICE, protecting the core functions of our society by expanding our ban on courthouse arrests to other important locations, requiring that all law enforcement officers in our state be properly identified, and ensuring that Vermonters can have their day in court if federal officers violate their constitutional rights. I could say much more, but I'm going to stop now so you can hear from some of the other speakers, because I know we have a lot of folks with a lot of things to say. So first, I'd like to invite Representative Leonora Dodge to speak about some of the work happening in the House of Representatives.
you, Falco. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me now? How about now? Representative Dodge from the town of Essex and the city of Essex Junction. Since January, we have watched in horror as ICE agents turned cities like LA, Chicago, and now Minneapolis into war zones. No one is safe. Not immigrants, not innocent children, not even citizens. Just days ago, near Minneapolis, which is still reeling from the tragic killing of Renee Nicole Good, an ICE operation tear-gassed a family, including 6 children, as they were trying to get home from a basketball game. The mom had to administer CPR to her infant. And a police chief in Brooklyn Park, just outside Minneapolis, just announced that ICE agents have been stopping his officers and demanding proof of citizenship, guns drawn. We're also seeing that ICE detention is deadlier than ever. In 2025, over 30 detainees died in custody, many due to untreated medical conditions or due to complications resulting from violent apprehensions. As a Latina legislator, I know personally how fear and uncertainty ripple through immigrant families when enforcement crosses the line into abuse. My friends and family are afraid, canceling international trips to visit their homes, even just to cross the border to Canada. We have memorized emergency helpline phone numbers and named power of attorneys to determine where our children will go if parents get taken. And parents are getting taken, and children are experiencing trauma. That's why I'm working to make sure Vermont upholds due process, transparency, and basic human dignity. The public outcry against these abuses brought us together, immigrant activists, legislators, civil rights advocates, and legal experts from Vermont and nationwide to dig into our statutory language and our constitutional rights and obligations. The result is a slate of bills that place checks at every step of the immigration law enforcement process. The bills include requiring law enforcement to be clearly identifiable, strengthening protections against vigilantes impersonating immigration agents, keeping ICE out of our schools, health facilities, and libraries, and guaranteeing access to legal counsel for people facing deportation. These measures uphold immigrant rights, they safeguard due process, and they reinforce public trust in the rule of law. Our constituents have been loud and clear. Defend Vermont from the chaos and violence of federal assaults on immigrants, on their allies, and on anyone unlucky enough to land in the middle of ICE operations. We cannot stand idly by while our Vermont dairy farms and construction crews get raided, our neighbors Nacho and Heidi get dragged out of their vehicles and detained simply for looking Latino, and immigration detainees in our correctional facilities go without basic access to interpreters, medical attention, and lawyers. I want to thank everyone who has filled our legislative inboxes with bill requests, turning despair into action. The bills are submitted, and now I encourage everyone to stay engaged in the process. We keep hearing that this is going to be a tough session, but thanks to the pressure from Vermonters, todos, the Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions have already begun taking testimony and started editing bill language around these measures. This is going to be a tough session, but this coalition is ready. Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Next, I'd like to invite Senator Tanya Vohosky to the podium.
I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank everyone for standing up and loudly saying no. We will protect Vermonters, all Vermonters. We will say no to ICE encroaching on our civil liberties, and we will do that in every way possible. We will do that in this building with legislation that we are working on and has been in process for a while, and we will do that in the streets when necessary. So thank you for standing in solidarity, for standing up for your neighbors. What we are working on in the Senate, and what has come from extensive work with the ACLU, with our legislative council, to understand what we can do to protect Vermonters. Not feel-good legislation, but real policy that will stand up and is defensible under the United Supreme Court's Supremacy Clause. We are working to craft language that will require all law enforcement operating in the state of Vermont be identified with their name or badge number and the agency they work for visibly on their uniform, and will not be using disguises and masks to conceal their identity. Yes. And we believe from the testimony from a constitutional law professor at Columbia that we do have the right to do this. We do have the right to say this is how law enforcement operates in Vermont. We do not have the right to say only federal law enforcement, but we do have the right to say all law enforcement. And that is what we are going to do. We are working to continue crafting that language so it is as strong and protective and as defensible as possible, because in Vermont, we do not want secret police. We will also expand our list of sensitive locations. Currently, there is a prohibition from civil arrests without a judicial warrant in courthouses. It makes sense to me and to our Judiciary Committee that any place that you must go to conduct your daily life or are forced to go to pay taxes or send your children to school, you should also have that protection. And so we are looking at expanding that protection to schools, to state, county, and municipal buildings, to churches and places of worship, to hospitals and medical facilities, because these are places that you don't have a choice but to go. And so you should be able to go there without fear of arrest, without a signed warrant. Now, I've heard some concerns that this may create danger. It does not prevent criminal arrest for violent behavior. It prevents extrajudicial civil arrest in these public places of accommodation. And we are working to ensure that this language is as protective and defensible as possible, with the ability to frankly take civil action if your constitutional rights have been violated, because our US and Vermont Constitution applies to everyone, not just citizens. In our Education Committee, they will be taking up a bill that has been introduced to ensure that there are basic immigration policies and protections to protect students in our schools, to ensure students and their families know their rights and know who to call for help if those rights are trampled on. And hopefully, later in the session, we will be taking up older legislation around safer stops to prevent unnecessary interaction with law enforcement in traffic stops that are not for public safety reasons. There is more we can do, and there is plenty that we can continue to do to protect Vermont and ensure that every Vermonter is as protected as we can possibly provide under the very real restraints of the Supremacy Clause of the US Constitution. I have been frustrated how little we can do, and I and our Judiciary Committee have worked hard to find the needle of what we can do to offer real protection in Vermont so that we can lead the way in saying no. We will not let our civil rights be eroded upon. We will not let our neighbors be rounded up and sent to concentration camps. We will not allow the death of democracy and the erosion of the rule of law In Vermont, we stand up. We bravely say no, because this brave little state says no to hate, says no to white supremacy, and says no to extrajudicial secret police. So thank you. Thank you for your work. We can't do it without you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Next, I'd like to invite to the podium Senator Becca White.
Okay, this is the best press conference I've been to so far with these adorable children. Thank you for bringing your families here. It takes a lot more courage to show up with this group than it does for us as politicians to show up. So I just want to thank you explicitly for being here. It takes a lot of courage. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Migrant Justice. So I don't know about you, but I'm angry. I'm really, really angry. About a few months ago, I had a friend who was detained by ICE when we were outside of his citizenship interview. And when I asked the men with masks and gear to protect themselves and unmarked cars, I introduced myself and I said, I'm a state senator. Who are you? They said, I don't need to tell you who I am. It's not my job to tell you who I am. Shame. That is your job. And so I'm so grateful for S208, S209, both with sensitive spaces and with identification, because it was shocking to me that even in a position of privilege, when I demanded information, I was told, I don't have to do that. It's not my job. I want to speak to you a little bit about what Sinclair Lewis wrote about in It Can't Happen Here, what George Orwell wrote about in 1984, and a quote that has been circling my mind since Renee Good was shot in the face in Minneapolis. The quote comes from George Orwell, where he says, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and your ears. It was their final, most essential command. It is our job as elected leaders, as individuals in positions of power, to not allow that type of reality to exist, where people can say and deny the rights, the constitutional rights of citizens, because they are told by Donald Trump's administration and by the tyrannical authoritarian administration that is beneath him, that the truth of what they see in videos and in photos and when they interact with ICE, that is the reality. The reality is that they're denying constitutional rights, and that it's not because we have a mass amount of criminals out there who need to be detained. No, it is because of a much larger, more sinister problem, which is the desire for this administration to create fear and doubt and to pick the winners and the losers in a race battle that they have created to disenfranchise Americans and American citizens and immigrant communities. That is what we are fighting against. We are fighting against the derailment of the reality that we live in. We have to look with our eyes and our ears and accept that the reality that we're experiencing is very bad, and that every day since the administration was inaugurated over a year ago has gotten worse. And as we continue to accept and be silent, we have to hold accountable our elected leaders. So I just want to comment on one thing before I leave you. And that's a quote that we had yesterday in the State of the State, or State of the Budget, my apologies. Our governor said that it's political posturing, essentially, to respond to the federal government, or at least that's basically the gist I heard. That's political posturing to bring up the inequities that the federal government is creating. I don't think it's political posturing. What I think is political posturing is when we have a governor who in good times talks about demographics and supporting immigrant communities. In good times, gives a State of the State where Afghan refugees are giving him a standing ovation for protecting him, and then remains silent when that same group of people is being targeted. That is political posturing. That is political posturing. Yeah, I was mad. I'm still mad. like me, please go ahead and send us some emails about S208, send us some emails about S209, and please continue to call for compassionate action, not political posturing, not silence, but compassionate action. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to invite to the stand, to the podium, not to the stand, Olga, who's a community member and a leader of Migrant Justice.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Olga Cruz, soy una trabajadora migrante.
Good afternoon. My name is Olga Cruz. I'm an immigrant worker.
Pues creo que ya todos sabemos el objetivo del por qué estamos aquí ahora, luchando otra vez por nuestra vida, por nuestra dignidad.
I think we all know why we're here today, and that's because we're here once again fighting for our lives and for our dignity.
Pero lo más importante, por nuestra libertad.
And most importantly, for our freedom.
Estamos viendo todas las situaciones que mucha de nuestra comunidad está viviendo en diferentes estados. No es nada fácil verlo, no es nada fácil oír de personas cercanas todo lo que está pasando.
All across this country, we're seeing the conditions in which our community is forced to live. And it's not easy witnessing what's happening, seeing and hearing what is going on.
No fue fácil para mí, para llegar hasta este lugar, para salir y dejar a mis hijas. No fue fácil, pero tengo que salir, tengo que luchar por mi comunidad, porque si yo no salgo, otra vez nos regresan a la oscuridad y eso no va a pasar.
And I can tell you, it also wasn't easy for me to come here to speak with you today. It wasn't easy for me to leave my daughters at home and show my face in public, but I did it because I feel the need to speak out. Because I know that if I don't speak, our community will be silenced and pushed once more into the shadows.
Creo que ya sabemos mucho de lo que estamos pidiendo. Son muchas diferentes cosas de lo que queremos que pase. No estamos seguros de lo que puede pasar, pero estamos pidiendo ayuda a que por favor nos ayuden con eso. Son cosas que realmente como humanos tenemos que tenerlos.
Now, you've heard about the package of proposals that we're introducing this year, and we don't know what the future holds for these proposals, but what we're asking is for all of us to join together in support of our human rights.
Como madre de familia, para mí este último año ha sido muy difícil. No es fácil porque estamos viendo todas las situaciones que nuestra comunidad está viviendo.
As a mother, I want to say that this last year hasn't been easy for me. To be with my family and witness what's being done to our community has been a difficult task.
Es una situación difícil. A veces no quiero mandar hasta mi hija a la escuela porque tengo miedo. Ella tiene miedo también de que ella pueda ser detenida o yo.
There have been times when I haven't wanted to send my daughter to school because of her fear and mine that she or myself could be detained.
No es una situación fácil, pero también el que seamos libres no asegura de que nosotros estemos completamente felices en este lugar.
Now, this hasn't been easy, but I also want to say that our fight is not just for our physical freedom. The fact of being free or not being detained doesn't mean that we're able to live with dignity.
Tenemos que conectar nuestra lucha, porque tenemos muchas diferentes luchas, pero si yo me pongo a hablar de eso, todo tiene que ver. Yo soy libre, pero no estoy viviendo en una casa digna, en una vivienda justa.
We need to see our struggles for human rights as connected. I can speak with you today because I'm not in detention, but that doesn't mean that I'll be going home tonight to housing that's dignified or a job that is fair.
Personas que están sido detenidas también están sufriendo allá adentro, porque lo que se está viviendo también allá adentro, eso no es lo que vive una persona. Allá los están tratando más que como animales.
And those who have been detained are suffering as well. When you're held behind bars, you aren't treated as a human being, but as an animal.
Para ellos allá adentro uno no tiene derechos. Si uno todavía es complicado luchar aquí y que nos puedan hacer valer, imagínense adentro.
So if it's difficult for those of us who are on the outside to fight for our rights, imagine how difficult it is when you're behind bars in detention and being told that you don't have any rights at all.
También quiero ser libre, quiero ir a mi iglesia, quiero comprar mi comida, quiero llevar a mis hijas a sus deportes, a su escuela, poder ser libre, salir a un parque o a donde sea que uno quiera estar, quiero ser tratada como cualquier otra persona que vive en este país o en este estado.
I want to be treated with the fairness and justice that I deserve. I want to be able to live and travel freely, to go to church, to go to the store, to bring my children to school or to a park. I want to be treated just like the human being that I am.
Por favor, tomen en cuenta lo que estamos pidiendo. Nosotros no somos ni la más mínima parte de toda la gente que está en Vermont. Somos muchos, pero no todos tienen el valor de poder salir y luchar, porque muchas cosas están sacrificando y estamos poniendo cosas en riesgo al ponernos aquí enfrente de ustedes.
And so I ask to be heard and to be recognized that those of us who you see in front of you are just a small percentage of the community that's living in this state, fighting for their rights. Not everybody is able to come and show their faces because it requires great sacrifice, putting ourselves at risk to speak with you today.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Leah Brenner from the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project. Oh, there you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. I'm Leah Brenner. I'm a staff attorney with the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, or VAAP. I'm here to speak briefly about the need for access to legal counsel for ICE detainees in Vermont. I've spent the last 6 months visiting ICE detainees in Vermont prisons with my VAAP colleagues. So these are folks held by ICE for purely civil, not for criminal allegations, for alleged immigration violations. These may be people who came to this country with lawful status, only to find that the Trump administration has categorically stripped the protection that they had away. It could be people who entered the US legally and built lives here under a valid visa, which has since expired. Others may have suffered persecution or torture in their home countries and came to the US seeking safety, only to find that new discriminatory policies are denying them protection, or are now being locked up and pressured by ICE to flee and return to potentially life-threatening situations. In the face of over 800 ICE detentions in Vermont this past year, our VAAP team of 4 lawyers simply cannot meet the needs of all immigrants held in Vermont prisons. When we visit, we offer basic legal screenings and some guidance where we can, and occasionally take on a new case for representation, but it's not enough. Many of the people we have spoken to have no criminal history and have no legal reason for being held by ICE in the first place. During their detention, many people face barriers to accessing medical care or resources in a language that they speak and understand. Currently, in Vermont, a person in ICE detention has no right to a lawyer. If an ICE detainee secures a lawyer, Vermont does not provide funding to offset the cost, and at times we see detainees face significant hurdles to even speak with their attorneys or to attend their own immigration court proceedings while in state custody. Vermont state and federal detainees who are held in the very same prisons for alleged criminal violations all have a right to a free attorney under the US Constitution. But ICE detainees in the exact same shackles and the exact same cells may never even speak to an attorney before they are shipped to a larger ICE detention in a faraway southern state where my team can't reach them, and eventually possibly be deported back to a country that for some may mean certain death. At VAAP, we often say that there are no rights without remedies. This means what good is having a right unless there's also a real process to correct things when that right is violated. Here in Vermont, we could make laws that give our immigrant community all the rights in the world, but when, not if, when ICE violates those rights that we can create in Vermont, as I have seen across our state almost every day for the last year, how will they hold ICE and the government accountable without access to an attorney? We need lawyers to stand up in courts and represent our Vermont community, immigrant and otherwise, when ICE and the government violate their and our rights. We are one and the same. Many other states provide free legal services to their immigrant residents in order to protect their communities and to keep everyone safe from government overreach. And it is time for Vermont to join them. Our state may be behind the times in this regard, but it's not too late to choose a different path. We all need and deserve access to justice. And Vermonters want to see their immigrant neighbors safely return to their Vermont homes and families. When something goes wrong, Vermonters want to see it righted through the proper legal channels. We know that the federal government will continue to brazenly violate the rights of our friends and neighbors, breaking laws and violating the Constitution, while claiming it is upholding the rule of law and making our country safe. That is why it is vital that the state provides basic access to lawyers and legal counsel who will stand alongside our immigrant community while they navigate systems that are designed to be disorienting and discouraging. By providing legal services for immigrants and ensuring everyone held in Vermont prison and in ICE detention has access to legal representation, we can deliver on Vermont's values. We appreciate your support in seeking state funding for legal representation for our precious community members who are detained and held by ICE within our brave little state. Stay tuned for more throughout the session, and thank you so much for being here today. Gracias.
Thank you, Leah. Next, I'd like to invite Jordan Souter, ACLU Vermont Policy Advocate, to share a few words.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Jordan Souter, he, him pronouns, and I'm a policy advocate for the ACLU Vermont. We all have rights that the government must respect, regardless of our immigration status. That is the law. But the Trump administration is breaking the law and actively terrorizing our communities through its cruel and dangerous mass deportation campaign. The federal government is attempting to intimidate us by eroding our constitutional norms, denying our most basic constitutional rights, and deploying masked and unaccountable agents into our communities. These so-called immigration enforcement agencies have taken people without warrant, warning, or identification. They claim to be going after only dangerous criminals, yet we know this is another lie perpetuated by the Trump administration. Based on their own data, a majority of people in ICE detention have no criminal conviction. And their cruelty has not stopped at immigration enforcement. They have attacked protesters, targeted US citizens, and people have been brutalized and killed as a result of ICE's aggressive and inhumane tactics. People are rightfully outraged and afraid, and are demanding to know how Vermont is going to protect their rights and defend our communities. Now, thankfully, along with our partners VAAP, Migrant Justice, and VPIRG, along with many other community organizations, We have identified several policy areas within our Firewall for Freedom campaign where Vermont can and should use its power to limit state interactions with immigration authorities, improve access to justice, and keep our community safe. Now, I want to take a minute to speak specifically to some of the proposals in front of the legislature this year, which can provide real, concrete protections. S208, that requires law enforcement be properly identified and not use masks to hide their identity. S209, which prevents federal agents from making warrantless immigration arrests in private spaces such as schools and healthcare facilities, and expand Vermont's ban on civil arrests at courthouses to include other state and local government buildings. Next, we must ensure that due process is followed for every single person within our custody, and that all civil detainees within our system are provided with legal representation and access to vital services. We must also ensure that every federal official operating within our state is adhering to our laws and the state and federal constitution, and provide avenues for recourse for people to have their day in court when federal officials violate our constitutional rights. And finally, we hope that the legislature will pass S144 and enact smarter stops for safer roads to address over-policing and racial disparities in traffic stops by prohibiting stops for equipment violations and consent-based searches without probable cause. I want to again thank our partners and the legislators who have prioritized these issues early in the session and worked to advance these policies and stand up for immigrants' rights. By enacting these and other Firewall for Freedom policy areas, Vermont has an opportunity to show other states how we can best protect our communities, protect our civil liberties, and our democracy as a whole. When our state refuses to be complicit in unconstitutional acts, when our state leaders create protections for our communities, and when neighbors look out for one another, that is how democracy ensures. Thank you.
All right, and finally, before we answer any questions, I want to invite up Jordan Hayden from VPIRG.
Good afternoon. I'm going to move this a bit. My name is Jordan Hayden. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Democracy Vermont Campaign Director at VPIRG, the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. Democracy has been a major pillar of VPIRG's work since we were founded in 1972. But here in 2026, we are facing challenges like never before. We're so grateful to the ACLU of Vermont, the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, Migrant Justice, among others, for their leadership on immigration matters. VPIRG is so honored to support that work. Now, we cannot allow our democracy to crumble in its 250th year, and we cannot allow ICE to act like a secret police force, ripping families apart, kidnapping and disappearing loved ones. 32 people died in ICE custody in 2025. That is indefensible. And that's why so many Vermonters are taking action, just like so many of you in this room right now. Last summer, VPIRG canvassers knocked on over 80,000 doors, reaching every single town in Vermont. And we talked with folks about the many attacks the Trump administration has waged against our state. Some cried, some gave hugs and invited us in for tea, and many shared their frustrations with the state of the world. So, when we asked them to take the pledge to protect democracy, they did. When we asked them to participate in a No King's Day rally, they did. When just over a week ago, we asked them to attend a vigil for Renee Good, an unarmed US citizen who was killed by an ICE agent, they did. And when we asked them, yet again and likely soon, to stand up and do everything possible to protect our communities from harm, I know that they will, and I know that we all will. So to all of the legislators already taking up democracy and immigration issues and bills this session, we thank you. This coalition is here to support you. And to all of the activists, organizers, advocates, and community members being guided by their moral compasses and doing everything you can to ensure that you are committed to doing what's right, please keep showing up. We so appreciate it, and we will be right there with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you to all of our speakers. Now we'd be happy to take any questions.
Is there a bill number yet for the legal representation?
There is not a bill number yet, but that should be introduced pretty soon. Representative Dodge is the lead sponsor, so keep checking the legislative website for that, and we'll be letting folks know when that comes out.
Can you talk more about barriers for immigrants to accessing healthcare when they're detained in Vermont facilities? Like, what kind of issues have you guys seen and how have these developed or not?
Yeah, this is something that I can speak to, and I think others might want to speak to this as well, but I can just briefly say that we have really, we're very, very concerned about the situation within Vermont's facilities when it comes to access to appropriate language services, and access to medical care, and those two things often go hand in hand. When folks don't know what's available to them, they don't know how to ask for help, they don't know how to contact attorneys or loved ones, they are often not getting the care that they need. And we also just have general concerns about the level of care that's being offered within our facilities. I think you'll learn more about that, but I can say at a high level, it's very concerning what we've seen inside our facilities, and we need to do better. And I'll pass the mic over to anyone else who might want to answer that. Okay, so.
Are you guys looking for interpreters in DOC facilities, or is something specific you're asking for?
Thank you. VAAP is always looking for volunteers in many ways. If you are, if you have legal expertise or language skills that you'd like to offer, you're welcome to contact VAAP directly. Our main email is info@vaapvt.org. For any other non-legal or non-language offers for help volunteer, we're actually offering that you connect to Jordan at VPIRG because they really have the boots on the ground for the non-legal side. So yeah, reach out.
Your question about
Do you want to talk about the barriers?
interpreters in the,
Or even if you're just looking for help from lawmakers or people in state employees and whatnot.
Yeah, the biggest issue that we find is that it's the state's duty to provide translation interpretation within their facilities, and so we don't rely on them to do any interpretation or translation when we come visit. We bring our own people or our own devices. We've found some barriers to that from DOC. And so we're happy to work together if they create their own situation or their own solution. We're happy to work together.
Any other questions? Get some in the back, yeah. What's the best way to follow the progress of these bills? I would say for folks wanting to know about the work of the ACLU, go to acluvt.org and you can sign up for our email alerts. We'll be letting folks know about that. And I'm sure that there are other ways that you can stay in touch with the work of Migrant Justice, VAAP, VPIRG, and others, but we'll be doing our best to make sure that folks know about what's happening and speaking about it regularly. We'll be sending out an alert to our email list later this week with the opportunity to contact legislators about all the bills that we talked about today. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more from the other organizations that stood up here today as well. All right, with that, I just want to say thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate the folks from the media covering this and everyone who stood up here with us, everyone who's in the audience, and everyone who's standing with us across the state in this important fight. Thank you so much. We can do this. I mean, you can hold on to it if you want, but we're happy to take it back.
Well, for the next time.
Yeah.
I will.
How are you? It was always floating around 15. Exactly.